Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Championship Leadership. We got Rob Decker out of Colorado Springs with us today. Rob, appreciate you being here, my man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on the show, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we were talking just a little bit, but Evan Money, that is his real name, Evan Money. He was an incredible guy. He was on this podcast. Like, you got to check out his episode. But he put us in connection, and so glad he did. So. The first question I always love to ask to start us off is Championship Leadership is the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you when you hear Championship Leadership?
Someone that's just driven by passion. That's championship stuff right there. The greatest champions were just so passionate about what they do, and that's what it's all about, man. Leading with passion, man.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. So let's dig into you and your story. You have a amazing, unique story. Well, we all have a amazing, unique
right?
Story,
we do.
But yours is truly amazing and unique. So if you could share, as much as your stories you would like, and kind of how that's gotten you to where you are in life right now.
Absolutely. So, like most of us, I had a very, very troubled childhood. My house was full of drugs, alcohol, violence, cops coming over all the time. And this was just a common theme in my house. And
where'd you grow up?
Oh, California, man.
Okay.
I grew up in Northern California. So, grew up there. And then when I was about 5 years old, I found out that the man who was raising me wasn't my biological father. And I think that just knowing that kind of created this black sheep in me, or this separation.
Uh-huh.
And then I found out that my sister wasn't my full-blooded sister, right? Because it was his daughter. And so very early on there was like this separation. And so, I naturally acted out. First it started off with like jumping on cars and then throwing rocks at windows, and then eventually led into stealing. And very troubled kid, pretty reserved though. I didn't have a bunch of friends. But then freshman year in high school came along and something inside me morphed. And I think just being exposed to my childhood as long as I did, and watching the relationship between my mom and my dad, and the one between my sister and I disintegrate, I just kind of went off and did my own thing. Well, freshman year was also when I was introduced to drugs and alcohol. And so I started shoving that stuff down my throat. And initially it was just kind of whatever your friends were doing. That's what we were all doing, and, deep down inside, I had some stuff that I didn't realize I needed to address, and the drugs and the alcohol helped numb all that stuff. And so by the time I was 18, I had been arrested a few times, been in juvenile hall, got an armed robbery charge. I met my biological father. When I met him, he was smoking meth. I came home after school one day, and my mom and dad's relationship had got so, and I hope I don't confuse people with the whole dad thing. So my mom and dad's relationship got so bad that my dad left the home. He was still paying rent. He was living with his girlfriend. My mom was high on drugs. She was doing her thing, and she was out of the city and in and out of the city. And she thought it'd be a good idea for me to meet my biological father. And so I came home one day, and the moment I walked in the house, I saw him smoking the glass pipe. And so, my relationship with my father figures weren't solid, man.
Yeah.
And and even shortly after that, my dad, who raised me, him and I got into a fist fight, like straight up, chucking him in the living room, and probably the worst fight I've ever lost in my life, man. But by the time I was 18, I was a full-blown drug addict, full-blown alcoholic. I had some good friends in my corner, loved playing sports, lifting weights, and athletics was my jam. But as time went on, time to be an adult stuff, I started getting these jobs. I'd get comfortable at these jobs. I'd mingle with the people way too much, and my drug and alcohol problems would come into those situations. So throughout my 20s, I was constantly losing jobs, in and out of relationships. I didn't really know how to treat a woman. I was very insecure, very jealous. I couldn't trust, right? I didn't know how to love, wasn't taught those things, right? So that reflected all my relationships. And by the time I was about 29 years old, 28 years old, I met a young lady while I was dating another young lady, because that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And working for this gym, selling drugs at the gym. And I went to go cash one of the checks at a bank, and I met a young lady, and we exchanged numbers, and we started dating, man. And very early on, I saw some really crazy signs. And plus I was kind of crazy myself. So crazy hanging with crazy, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I was at such a point in my life that it's like I needed that crazy. It's kind of like when you're addicted to drugs and alcohol, it's like you need more to get that sensation, or at least you think you do, right?
Yeah.
And you know, even bad relationships was a drug within itself. And so so that's what I was doing, man. I was chasing those really bad relationships, because the good ones didn't do anything for me, right? Well, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. So I met this young lady, and it just became very ugly pretty quickly. And so we had separated, and in that separation and that breakup, you know, I had a buddy who was always trying to get me to go to church, and he wanted me to receive Jesus. And I was like, and for the longest time I was like, dude, if that works for you, cool. For me, not so much, bro. Cool. And, but this time around, I had lost my job. I lost my license to a DUI. I didn't have my girlfriend. I was still selling drugs. I was basically homeless. And I was just like, yo, dude, I'm willing to go to that Bible study. And so, you know, I got saved. I got prayed over in that Bible study meeting. And shortly after that, and I started spending time with these guys, started reading the Bible, started going to church. And then a young lady made her way back into my life. I found out she was doing some unsavory stuff. And I was just like, well, you know, I still care about her regardless what we've been through. And so I reached back out to her, and I'm like, well, you got to stop what you're doing. Well, the deal was she was going to stop. And she went on this like last little
hurrah.
Thank you, hurrah. It was one of those. And she was sending me pictures and texts about the stuff that was being done to her on that little hoorah. And so she really wanted to get things right between us. And I was troubled about it, but, you know, I really cared for her. And so when she came back, she actually picked me up from my buddy's house. We were watching the Lakers play playoff ball, you know, Kobe was still doing his thing. Yeah. And we went to the liquor store, went back to her place, and we got into a conversation. And I believe that in that conversation, you know, she was really hoping for me to embrace everything that was going on. And for me, it was really hard. You know, we'd had previous issues. I just had this new God situation, you know, there was still, and I was still struggling with drugs and alcohol. It was just, it was messy, man. It was messy. And so I went downstairs to go to sleep, and I wake up to a banging at the door. And she comes down, and I ask her what happened. And she looked at me and she said, I called the cops and said that you raped me and tried to kill me. And in that moment, I was just so betrayed and hurt and shocked and scared. And, you know, when they say your life flashes before you, I mean, just the movie that went off in my head in those very few seconds was just like Shawshank Redemption-ish, you know, like it was on some, like, it was insane, man. And in that moment, I just decided, like, I just can't live this life anymore. And you know, I was told from a very young age, by the time you're 30 years old, you're going to be dead or you're going to be in prison. And here I am 1 week after my 29th birthday, Memorial Day weekend. Wow. I was like, this is it. And I turned around, ran headfirst for a third-story loft window, jumped headfirst out of this closed window. And as I was falling down to the ground, I clipped my foot on an awning. It changed my fall. I broke my back, my arms, and collapsed my lungs. So my goal was to kill myself. And that did not happen. No. I just remember laying on the ground, man, and taking these deep, deep breaths. Attempting to take deep, deep breaths. And I couldn't do it, man, because I didn't realize my lung was collapsed. And I just looked at that broken window and I asked God, why? Why would you let me live? You know, and EMTs came, swooped me up, took me to the hospital, and I went under the knife for about 10 hours. And I woke up to lights and beeping and tubes coming out of my neck. I had an external fixator on my left arm, cast on my right arm, a back brace on me, the EKG, the oxygen, everything's beeping and moving, and I'm in so much pain, and I'm being pumped full of morphine. And the cops come in and shackle me to the bed, said, "You're under arrest for rape and attempted murder." And I remember laying there, and it was a couple days in, and one of the police officers, so I had 24-hour surveillance at this point. So once they shackle you, you're like, you're in custody. And that's what I was. So, so I'm in custody, and this cop is grilling me, man. He's just giving me a hard time. And he's looking down at the paperwork or the folder, the case, and he goes, "Man, Mr. Decker, you're just like a really bad guy. You're a really bad guy. I see what you've done here." And I just started to break, man. I was like, I've made a lot of bad choices in my life, and that's just not one of them right there. Yeah. That's definitely not something I would do. And if anything, I cared about her. I mean, that's why I was there in the first place.
Right.
And nurse comes in and she's like, "Mr. Decker, you have to calm down. I can't have your heart rate up." It's because my body, after the surgeries, I lost so much blood. Yeah. And they were giving me blood transfusions, and my body wouldn't take to the blood. So really? Like I'm low. Yeah, I'm low. My body's just not receiving any of it. And so as this nurse is leaving, guess who walks in the door? This is quiz time for you, my man. So
girl?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
So it was her. So she came in, and she was disguised. She had just got her hair done. Really? She was wearing, she just got her hair done. She lengthened it, and then she was wearing sunglasses, and she had a folder in her hand with her sister. And the demeanor of the officer just changed. He was just like, "Well, this is kind of strange, because that's who I think it is, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's her." And he goes, "Man, this, that makes no sense. Right? Someone's going to accuse you of such vicious charges, right? But yet show up for any reason to the hospital."
Yeah.
And he escorted her out. And that was the last time I ever saw her. And later that night, I was just laying in bed, and I was praying, man. I was asking God, what are we going to do here? And in that moment, I just remember this calm that came over me for a moment. And if you've ever been in a hospital, the lights, the noise, the intercoms, like, I'm hearing the oxygen machine and like all of it, man. You can hear the pain medication machine just pump right into your neck, right? And this just peace came over me for a moment. It was like, charges will be dropped, bills will be paid, and you will walk again. And I just doze off into this like little dream or vision of playing soccer. And I wake up in the morning and everything's the same. Like all the pain is back, the commotion is back, like the traffic is back. And one of the police officers that was watching me, he goes, "Hey, Decker, I just want to let you know that they're going to drop the charges." And I was like, wow, and so a couple days pass, man. And they come in, they drop the charges. They're like, "Hey, Mr. Decker," this was a different set of cops that originally arrested me.
Sure.
Those cops actually tried to come back on a later day and stick me with it anyway. But
really,
these ones were like, "Hey, we hope the best for you. We hope everything turns out okay for you." And right after that, because I was no longer a prisoner of the state, I was allowed to have guests. Well, my mom was my first guest of all people. And the way that my mom and I had left off was really bad. I mean, I was in a really bad place, and some of the stuff I had told my mom in our last conversation is something that no matter how upset a parent makes you, you should never say the things that came out of my mouth. And those were the things that came out of my mouth. And those could have been the last words my mom ever heard from me.
Yeah.
And my mom walks in the room, and she's bawling her eyes out, and she just got done talking to the neurosurgeon, because I just saw them standing outside the door, and I saw her response with what he was telling her.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What's up, Mom? What's going on?" She's like, nothing. I'm like, "What are you being told?" And she's like, nothing, son, nothing. Everything's going to be okay. And then I get it out of my mom, you know, that they said that I may never walk again.
Yeah.
You know, they're telling her this. And she goes, you know, son, everything had ended that day for you. And for me, that was my mom's way of showing love. I knew that my mom had been raped and beaten and ran away from home. My mom was a very troubled young lady.
Yeah.
She had me at 17 years old. And she said they told her she was never going to get pregnant. And the second thing is like, she was encouraged heavily to have an abortion, and this is not what she did. And so, you know, here her son, her baby boy, is now laying in a hospital, years of crap, drugs and addiction, childhood trauma, like bad relationships, like you name it, I had it. And she's looking at her son right there, head rocking back and forth, eyes rolling in the back of the head from all the medication. And she's just like, I just wish it would have ended, because then her pain could have ended and my pain could have ended.
Yeah.
And, you know, at that point, the nurses walked in and they said, hey, we're going to try to get you to stand up today. And I knew for a fact wasn't going to happen, man.
Yeah.
Just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. Oh no, I couldn't, I had a catheter in, I couldn't pee for myself.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't go use the bathroom. Like I would have to call nurses in to move me side to side and jam pillows, wedge them underneath me so I could be comfortable for like 4 minutes, you know, like that was my life at that time. Wow. And I had to have someone feed me, shave me, bro. It was nuts.
Yeah.
And but because my mom was in that room, I wanted to give her hope. And crazy, right before I jumped out the window, my buddies and I had just watched The Passion of Christ. So I'm like, well, really? I just watched. Yeah, it was crazy. I'm just, the way everything lined up was just mad crazy. Right. So I'm over here, you know, reflecting on the whooping, the shellacking Jesus took. And my understanding was that he died for me. And the least that I could do after the shellacking he took was to try to get up out of my bed and give my mom some hope. And so I did, and it sucked.
I bet.
Dude, I felt like I jumped out the window all over.
Oh man.
And they opened me from the side. They didn't even open me from the back initially. So they opened me from the side to put in these cages. And so, you know, it's all fresh. I'm weak. I lost a bunch of weight. I lost muscle. You know, I lost strength. And so it feels like as I'm sitting up that my insides want to jump out of my side, right? And I'm like, this sucks. And I go to stand up, man. And I swear it felt like I got hit with a bag of bricks and I just squealed. Nurses jammed some morphine into my med tube, laid me down, and they're just like, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, neurosurgeon comes in, is like, hey man, we're going to try to perform another surgery. And so they performed another surgery. After that surgery, I think I hung out for 2 or 3 days. Nurse came in and I was able to sit at the edge of my bed without, trembling in pain. And she stood me up and I was able to put so I fell when I hit the ground. The left side of my body is what took most of the damage.
Yeah.
And so I was able to put most of the pressure on my right side, not so much on my left. But she took me out into the hallway, and I was able to drag my left foot. And with that, I was so excited because like I am gonna walk again. You know, I didn't realize the journey it was gonna be to get there, but she brings me out there, and I start dragging my left foot, and I run into the wall so my right leg's fine, my left leg's not, but I'm full board, man. I'm going for it. I'm sprinting. I'm like Carl Lewis in this, or Usain Bolt, or whoever's listening, whoever the sprint track runner was of your time, that's who I am.
Yeah.
And I just took off and I bolted into the wall, man. And dude, the look on her face, she was so concerned, and I'm over here laughing. I'm like, this is real. You know, like I'm gonna run, I'm gonna jump, like I'm just so excited, man. And shortly after that, I got released to go stay with my mom. And you know, I think that going to stay with my mom was a huge blessing because even though I was still struggling with alcohol and a lot of stuff in my life and my past, and emotional stuff that I had never addressed, didn't even realize I had. You know, I got to know my mom for the person she was. I got to know the deep stories of her childhood. And then she started telling me about my dad and his childhood stuff. And, you know, what really helped me was looking at my mom and dad like they weren't parents, but people, and people that had been through some stuff, like me, like I'd been through some stuff. And so my mom got a shady deal. My dad got a shady deal. They brought their shady deals together. And I mean, what's that leave you with? Right. And then, so then that was kind of given to us. And, you know, I was able to look at my mom and my dad and just forgive them for all the stuff that we had been through. And I understood that they always tried their best, and they had their own demons and their own struggles and their own insecurities. And at that moment in life, I was able to start loving them for people, you know, and not blame them for all the crap that was done to us.
Yeah.
And so that was healing. That was healing. That forgiveness was great healing for me, because it actually helped my healing and my emotional and spiritual growth to be able to do those things. And eventually I had to have another back surgery because things weren't going well. I mean, I was still exposed to this cigarette smoke, marijuana smoke. I was even smoking some marijuana and still drinking. And so I wasn't giving my body the environment to heal properly. And eventually I had to have another surgery. And then after that surgery, my best friend came to the hotel, picked me up, brought me to his house for one night. And that one night turned into 3 years. And within that time, I developed a stronger relationship with God. I started going back to the gym with an eating better. So I started eating better, going back to the gym, praying more, and things just started to happen, man. Like all of a sudden I started getting bigger and stronger. When I jumped out of that window, I was 215 pounds of solid muscle.
Yeah.
That 3 weeks into that hospital stay, I was 160 pounds.
Dang.
So yeah, my body completely
atrophied. How tall are you?
So 5'10".
Okay.
So I was like a stout linebacker.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then and so I went to go see my neurosurgeon one day, and he looks at me, he's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Yo, I'm lifting weights and I'm praising Jesus, man." he's like, "What?" Like, seriously? And it's cool because Jason, how cool am I to call him by Jason and I? We're such good, you know, Dr. Liftshuts, right?
Yeah.
He amazing guy, and we're still very good friends. And he was always a fan of mine and always a supporter, and he was always there for me as much as he could be, being a neurosurgeon, you know. And yeah, man, he just saw me and he was like, "What? You're putting on muscle? Like what?" You know, I went from 160 to 185, and he's just like, "Something's going on." I was riding my bike to the hospital appointments, but what happened is that in my healing process, like I was healing because I forgave people. You know, I found hope in in life and purpose and having a mission in this life. And I started to build off that. I was like, well, you know, maybe I'm supposed to use my story and my childhood and the abuse. Like, you know, one thing we didn't touch on was I was molested as a kid. So when when another man does that to you, it messes with your sexuality. And, you know, it's like, I had to be with all these girls to like, well, that's not who I am. That's not who I am. That's not who I am. Right. That's not what I realized I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, in my healing, I realized that's what I was doing. And so, you know, I had to address so many things. And so this 3-year window was very pivotal for me to eat well and train and get spiritually sound. And eventually, and I was living off disability. So I'm being told I'll never walk again. I'm going to live off a disability for the rest of my life. Right. If anything, you can go to the grocery store because that's what you'll be doing. You'll be able to do. You'll never lift weights, and you'll probably never play sport again. Like those are all safe assumptions considering the how bad your injury was. Yeah. And bro, I mean, we flipped that, right? Yeah. I'm a personal trainer, health coach, motivational speaker, and creating a ministry, and I play center field for my softball team, and I lift weights every single day. Like, and going back to Jason, it's like him and I spoke a couple months ago, And he said, out of all the back surgeries I've ever done, on one hand, I can tell you 5 people that just live functional lives, just functional. Like you get to move around, do well, right? Because back surgery is like horrendous. Yeah. And he's like, but you, like, you've just taken it to another place. And so I know I jumped ahead a little bit, but back into the recovery and being on disability, I was led to go out and get a job. Well, now you're going to go get a job as a personal fitness coach, and you're going to use fitness to heal people. You're going to develop these one-on-one relationships with people, and you're going to partake in their pain, and you're going to understand where they come from, and you're going to lift a little bit of weight in the process, if that's the door that opens in those opportunities, and that's what you're going to do. And so I got a job at a gym. First job I get, meet this young lady. She was assessing me. She was a sales rep at the gym. And she was assessing my personal training style. Yeah. And we're going to fast forward. She's my wife of 5 years, and we have 2 beautiful children, right? Like,
that's awesome.
And so, but that was all a process too. The very first 9 months of my relationship with Alyssa, I was still struggling with alcohol. Yeah. And, our first date, I bought a pitcher of beer, and she's like, this is great. she's like, I don't want any of that. And I was like, cool. Wasn't for you anyway.
Yeah, right.
That's first off. Yeah. Second off, this is my warm up, right? We're going 2 pitchers deep in this bad boy, right? Like, and she looks at me, and she's just like, I'm not okay with that. And the truth is that as I'm getting off all the pain medication and stronger and healthier, and my life is coming back, it was something that I took to my knees every single night. Like, help me get off the alcohol, because I am not stronger than this right now. I use it to medicate physically, emotionally, spiritually, like mentally. Like, that's what I used alcohol for. And I still struggled with it because there were certain things I didn't address. And I knew that Alyssa was going to be a huge key in me quitting. And so for 5 months, it was a big struggle. And I got behind the wheel of her car, ended up totaling her car, and ended up underneath somebody's house. And again, here I am, broken down, crying out to the Lord. And I'm like, here we are. I've been given my life back. I've been given a job. I've been given a girlfriend. I've gotten off all the pain medication. Like, I got my life back, right? And here I am getting behind the wheel of a car. And I asked God underneath that house, like, if you help me out of this situation, I will leave my job to move to Southern California, because Alyssa had just graduated school. And she wanted to move back home. I'm like, I will leave my great paying job that I'm so crushing it at, to move with her. And I will marry this woman. If this is your will for my life, I will marry this woman, and I will never pick up the bottle again. And without getting into too much great detail about that situation, like, basically I got a slap on the wrist, man. And the way everything lined up that night, there was about 3 or 4 different opportunities that could have buried me. And I avoided every single one of them. And I just felt like, you know what, this is it. And I never drank again after that. Like, I have not had the urge. It has not been in me. It was, I think I had this moment of, man, I've gotten away with so much my whole life. I got in trouble for a few things, right? Yeah. But I gotten away with so much in my whole life. I've been given my life back, and here I am throwing it away for some alcohol.
How long ago was that?
That was 7.5 years ago. January 8th, 2013. Was the last time I hit the bottle. And so that was, and so now we're living in Southern California. We get married. We go out to Colorado, fall in love with Colorado, vow that in 5 years we'll be living there. 5 years or 3 or 5. My wife's the numbers person like that. Right? Like, baby, how long we've been seeing each other? Yeah. Right? When's our anniversary? But anyways, so we ended up paying off a bunch of bills, like, had our first child. We had Caleb, and then we ended up making our way out here in Colorado. And so in the last 2 years, especially in the last year, I've opened up my own gym, Kingdom Fit. The Fit stands for faith and training. My fitness and my faith go hand in hand, man.
Yeah.
You're going to learn about yourself a lot when you're training all the time. How hard you're willing to work, how much you're willing to research, what are you willing to tolerate? Like, what are you willing to do to yourself to get where you need to be? And I think spiritually it's very similar. You have to dig really deep. On those days you don't feel like showing up, you really need to show up. And so there was a lot of similarities between the two. And so I developed Kingdom Fit, and it just kind of morphed into this training business / ministry because of my backstory, like my literal backstory. I've had certain individuals that are just drawn to me that need mentorship or guidance and hope that they can get off of pain medication or get rid of their back pain and all that kind of stuff. And so right now that's where we're at. And I also have, Rob Decker Speaks, where I get to go to these personal events and these church services where I get to go out there and I get to share my testimony and share with people that God is real and there's a way out of all this stuff. And, physical fitness. So I'm big into the physical fitness / mental health part. I think a lot of times people don't understand the correlation with physical movement and mental health. Mental health is huge, right? The physiological effects that physical fitness has on the brain that can help you get rid of depression and anxiety will open you up to really, I'm sure you've been on a run and all of a sudden you spark all these great ideas and you start thinking about these certain events and you're like, that was the answer I was looking for. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the blood is flowing, man. But that's the onset situation, right? The long term is you can develop that kind of thinking all the time through physical fitness. And I just don't think that physical fitness gets enough love in the mental health realm. Today is actually 3-year anniversary of a very close friend of mine who was about the same age as myself, just got married like I had just gotten married, just had a kid, and he couldn't fight the demons and the mental health portion of it and overdosed on fentanyl and alcohol. So for me, and he wasn't working out as much as he was when we first started hanging out. He got so wrapped up into the mental health stuff that he kind of pushed aside the physical fitness part of it. And not to say that would have completely saved his life, but it wouldn't have hurt the situation, right? Yeah. And so today's actually the 3-year anniversary of his passing. Yeah. Which was probably, and I've lost my dad. I lost my dad 1.5 years ago to a drug overdose. That was a hard loss, man. Very hard loss. Yeah. But with my buddy Mark, it was so hard because it was like looking at myself, man. Yeah. The guy I could have been, the guy that I was, just a different brotherly bond, and so, mental health plays this huge role in everything that I'm doing today, along with the faith and the physical fitness. And so that's where we're at, man. I
love it, man.
Just trying to set out on that mission to help the hearts of the broken.
Yeah. So what, there was a lot there. I appreciate you sharing that. And,
I know it's an onion, bro. Just keep peeling. There's more.
That's good. What is the impact and the direction, the vision that you have here to make in the next 5 years, let's say, just short-term vision?
Well, honestly, I want to touch as many hearts as I can with my story. I want people to have hope. With the physical fitness side, I still want Kingdom Fit to grow on the training side, but Kingdom Fit is also, a mental, emotional, spiritual element to it as well. Right. And so I just want it to grow to where people hear the word Kingdom Fit and they find hope. They're just man, we know a guy who's been through it and he's very supportive and he's there for you and he can guide you, teach you, love on you, help you. And I want that to kind of like a tidal wave just come through Colorado Springs because what I didn't realize when we moved here is that at the time, Colorado Springs had the #1 suicide rate for teens, young men.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And I know what it was being suicidal my whole life. And I didn't pull the trigger until the perfect opportunity took place. Like
Yeah.
those seeds were planted long before I
Yeah.
actually, jumped out of that window.
Right.
And then you also have the military here in the Springs, where a
Yeah.
lot of these men are on pain medication, and they have back problems or an injury history, which, bro, I've had it, right? And I've been
Yeah.
able to come out of it. And so to make an impact on that community, to make an impact on the young men, and those men that are coming out of the service or retired, or, those guys are fathers, man. They're
Yeah.
husbands. And
Yeah.
so if you can't function in everyday life, like, how productive can you be as a father or a husband, And so I'm hoping that my story and my passion and mission really helps change the mindset and the heart of these individuals, so that they can be better dads and better fathers and better brothers, better husbands,
Yeah.
I mean, I think as men, we have some very heavy responsibilities,
Yeah.
and I definitely want to help those get through those, and shed some light on what they may be currently going through.
Yeah, absolutely. I lost your video there for a second, but what I want to respect your time. We're almost
You're
45
good.
minutes into this thing. This is flown by. So
Well, whatever time you need, bro, whatever you want from me, like,
okay,
sometimes
appreciate that.
sometimes it's hard to put a time limit, especially because,
It
like,
is.
man, some people will just be like, man, you went through so much. I got this question. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
all right, let's go down. And because for me, if there's any way that I can help, I just want to help, man.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What who are some of the championship leaders that have really impacted you along this path and this journey that you've been on? And more importantly than who, like how have they? What are some of the characteristics of them as leaders that have really helped you out?
Well, I'll say this, and I didn't receive it at the time. My two best friends are actually, well, I have three. If you do that whole best friend thing, I got three
Yeah,
really close brothers to me, and two of them, they're actually cousins, and so their dads were very good dads. Like, I didn't get to see that, and so early on, I didn't get to recognize those things. And so, and both of their names happen to be Joe or Jose. And so, early on, at least I got to see what a good dad looked like,
yeah,
so that later down in life, I could recognize it and be like, hey, those guys were good dads.
yeah,
Right. So that would be like, the earlier stages in my life. Well, when I came out into Southern California, I mean, I would say Evan Money, honestly,
yeah,
bro. Evan Money, and dude, the dude's so humble, and he's so, like, walled out, man. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if Evan has a bad day,
I don't
like,
know. I don't know. Yeah,
but he was very monumental in my development and growth and trying to get on stage, because never did I see in my life that I was going to get on stage and I was going to share a story, that I was going to be on podcasts or in books and magazines and stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff was really driven by conversations that I had with Evan. And so, Evan's done it already, or he's still doing it, but I'm still in the early stages of my development with all this kind of stuff. And so he's always great for advice. He's always great for encouragement as well, man. Another guy I have out here in Colorado Springs is Jim McMahon. He's, he was a motivational speaker. He's retired now. He's got this photography company, and he's just absolutely amazing. And, his heart for people is just, it's phenomenal. And so, I get to have these amazing conversations with level-headed men, because I'm a very passionate guy. And
yeah.
a lot of times that could get in the way. Like, I just, I aim for something and go for it. And
Right.
sometimes I just need those sound dudes in my corner that are like, all right, slow it down, take a deep breath, pump the brake. Right. And those are, definitely two guys that have made an impact on me recently. And the third would be, he was the general manager of the gym I was working at when I first got here, Mike J. And Mike, from day one, was a fan, a supporter. When I started building my gym, he knew all about it. I was working for a gym and he knew what I was doing. He saw my heart and my mission and my purpose. And he says, this is bigger than your employment here. This is, and to have that type of support, and him and I are still, and he wants to work on some podcasts together and develop those things. Cause my desire is to create a podcast that is focused around faith, awesome, fitness, and mental health, right? Because they all three of them connect, and I want to develop something that everyone can, because we all have those three things on some level somehow in our life. However you define those things, they exist. And so man, those are some big dogs in my corner that I really love and care about and respect.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's important to have those people in your life, and I know, no doubt, you're that person for a lot of people as well. So, as we do wrap this up, what would be like one or two things if you could give to the listeners today? Like if they implemented today, it would help move their life forward today. What would that be?
I think understanding that we all serve a certain purpose, and that purpose is good. There's a good purpose for all of our lives. And I think, unfortunately, what happens we don't realize that we have a purpose, or we try to fulfill somebody else's purpose. We start trying to do what someone, like, I'm not going to be Evan Money, bro. It's not, if I went to go chase,
nor should you try to be, right?
Right. But you will get guys, that will do that. It's the same in fitness, right? Like, we would chase the guy that we wanted to look the most like. So we would train like him, eat like him. Well, here's the crazy part. We all have different body types, right? And we're all designed differently. And so accepting accepting that you are different and that you're specially made, and that you have a particular purpose, and it's not going to be someone else's purpose, and I believe, and the second thing is when you find that purpose, there's going to be a passion that comes with that purpose. And don't ever let fame or money or the need for everyone to like you to interfere with your passion and drive. Because when you start doing that, you're going to get away from those things. And so, and it's easy to do. You're not going to please everybody. And here's the truth. There's going to be someone that dislikes what you do. They're going to have something to say about it.
For sure.
But you keep pressing on, man. And so, purpose and passion. We're going to go with the P's, my man.
Yeah, I like it. You got the theme. That's perfect, man.
Right.
I appreciate you. This has been amazing. And we'll definitely have to do this again, because I know there's more.
Yeah, man, I would love to. Hey, listen to it a couple times, pull out some stuff, and let's dig even deeper, man.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some ways that the listeners can find out more about you and what you're up to, Kingdom Fit, and follow you?
Yeah, so Kingdom Fit actually follows under Rob Decker Speaks. Rob Decker Speaks is more of like this global thing, right? Because you can just click on my website and listen to my story. And so my story's been told all over the world. And so within Rob Decker Speaks, you have Kingdom Fit. So that's more localized. So, there's places where you can fill out your information, get a hold of me, email me, right? Facebook, Rob Decker, Instagram, Decker_Rob, it's pretty easy. And truth is, man, if someone is trying to get a hold of me, especially if I see that it's urgent or they're dealing with something that they heard in this podcast and like, hey, I relate to that, I need some answers. Like, I will do everything I can to get to you as soon as possible, because I understand that urgency. I will always do my best to get to you. I don't want to ignore anybody, and I really truly want to help people. And, those are the best ways. And hey, we're working on the book, my man. The book
I was going to say, when's this book coming? Good, man.
I sat down with the writer on Sunday. We just started drawing up the outline. And so, again, Evan Money. Evan Money, he just encourages some stuff in this life, man. And, so yeah. So
cool.
Got that going on.
I appreciate it, man. And thank you. We'll get this all linked up, and I can't wait to get this one released. So thank you so much for taking time to be on the show.
Thanks for having me, brother, man.
Hey, you bet. Have a good day.
You too.